Was a funny noise, wasn't it? It's probably because my phone was right beneath the microphone. Anyway, good evening. Welcome to another stream of Lyrebird Edits. Hope your week has been just lovely. Tonight we're going to be continuing on with a story that we started editing last week by Stupid Anime Girl / Sayaka, who recently became one of my followers. So, last stream we got about halfway through, I believe. Now, this is where it gets a little tricky, because I copy-pasted this portion of the story over to my own document here. And tonight what I've done is I have found the place where I got up to last time, which was when the police officer was approaching our main character outside the convenience store. I think about it was a little before, somewhere, I don't remember. Regardless, I managed to sort of find the place where it was and copy it over, but it seems like I can't copy the comments over, which is strange. So in that case, I'll have a think. I'll just think in my head over the next couple of minutes whether or not I want to just edit over this portion of a document, which is what I may do, except I like to type in my edits. Anyway, I'll give it some thought. This story is, from what I recall, about a man who wakes up and finds an intruder in his home. Yet as he tries to get help from his neighbor and from the person across the street working at the convenience store, he slowly begins to realize that something's very wrong with him. I think we've just gotten up to the part where it's revealed that he's got like a sort of incision across his neck, and it's sort of like dead flesh. Maybe like his head's been transplanted from one body to another? I'm not quite sure. So we're going to read on and we're going to find out. But before that, I'll just wait for a couple of people to trickle in. And yeah, I'm going to put my phone on the charger too, because otherwise we'll run out of battery. So I'll be back in a second. Alrighty, very good, very good. Apologies for dropping out and coming back in. Oh, I've got cables everywhere. I'm very disorganized tonight. So I may not be able to finish all of this story tonight, in which case I will probably call it quits. Sometimes I like to go over multiple streams. I think maybe we'll see how much we can get done. In which case I'll start up pretty soon. I won't dilly-dally. I will not tattle around. But I will wait for just the stream to warm up a little bit. Any news? I got my first YouTube comment. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Lee. People do watch through YouTube. There you go. I think Sayaka, the author of this story, it's Lee. Lee Everett. Thank you, Lee. I mean, it's not that having a first YouTube comment is like the most monumentous, groundbreaking thing. YouTube comments are dime a dozen, shall we say, but yeah, it's I don't know, like, the only reason I broadcast to YouTube is to basically keep it as an archive, because Twitch doesn't archive, and YouTube does. So yeah, I think the Twitch Twitch is a much more sort of focused streaming service relative to YouTube. Speaking of, in addition to... No, not in addition to, just solely by itself, Twitch told me that they have a low latency option, which I have now switched over to. I have no idea if that's going to be kicking in immediately, or if it's just something that's going to trickle through. I do not know. But it's important, I think, that we have a low latency stream. I mean, the overall thing that we're here for is the words. Speaking of which, they are a little small, so let's make them bigger. We can embiggen these words. Big them up. Make them bigly. And we also need some... Just trying to make it nice and uniform. Yeah, there we go, nice. Here we go, good. It 2 starts here. Little smiley face. It's just to get it up and running. Also, Pumpkin Pie Addict, if you're watching the streams or some of the replays, thank you for your Reddit message. I'll reply back to you over Reddit. But yes, I did get that message, so I'll have to remind myself to reply. And thank you for the kind words too. That's very nice. Okay. My goodness, what's going on with my phone? No, no, no. Yes. Good. Yep, everything looks pretty good. Nice. Okay, in we go. So we got up to here last time. Now the last thing that happened was we had our main character whose name I've forgotten, but it was mentioned a little further up here. Who has walked into the convenience store. The cops have been called, I think maybe partly to appease the store attendant, but also to investigate the break-in at this man's house, our main character's home. So we start here, and what I'll do is I will plonk myself here and start reading. I couldn't believe my eyes. Thank God, something was finally going right tonight. I tried to present myself with a bit of sanity as he approached, in spite of how cluttered my mind was. We exchanged pleasantries and went through the usual questions. I confirmed myself as the caller and led him across the street to the apartment. I did notice that during the brief exchange his eyes were drawn to my neck, but I was glad he didn't press the issue. Greater problems loomed large ahead. He picked up the conversation once we stood outside the door, or once we were outside. He can pick one. At this point in time, I'll just keep reading. Do you know if they're armed? He asked. I haven't seen them. I woke up and just heard scratching from my bathroom. Getting out to call you is all I've done since. And how long ago was this? 10 minutes ago, really, no longer than that. I locked the door behind me, so they should still be in there. We're gonna make a comment about that. I checked the handle. Thankfully, it was still locked. Whoever was in there was sure to have their little game end here. For your safety, I need you to remain outside while I handle this, understand? No, of course, you do your thing. I handed him the keys and stepped back, watching from beside the stairs. He reached for his belt and unholstered his gun. He knocked with a clear, loud pattern. "This is the police. If you are armed, drop your weapons and come up with your hands above your head," he said in a raised voice. He waited a moment, but there was no response. Swiftly, but surely, he moved inside, escaping my view. It seemed quiet at first. A second later, the lights went on, but it remained blissfully silent. But then it returned, that ravenous clawing at the bathroom door. He called out, "Come out with your hands above your head, slowly." His focus must have shifted to the bathroom. Excuse me, I shouldn't be drinking so much tea at the same time as I'm trying to read out loud. There was nothing but that god-awful scratching. Whoever was in there must have kept at it since I left. Maybe they were treating the door like some sort of malformed art canvas. They were a psychopath. The door next to them was probably some sort of malformed art canvas. Their madness spent at my expense. With greater force, he spoke again. "I repeat, come up with your hands up, or I will be forced to enter." No voice came in response. It became clear then that my guest was not about to cooperate. Finally, he shouted out, "I'm coming in." Those were his last words before there came a noise even more bone-chilling than the scratching. A scream of shh. A scream of unbridled terror and a low, guttural gurgling, then gunfire, 2 shots. Finally, the clink of metal hitting the floor, his gun. The sounds rang out in slow motion, but my mind acted without delay. I was on my feet, making a break for the stairs before I knew it. I was desperate to find a means of escape. Okay, let's cut it there, and we'll do a little edit. While I put my phone onto silent so it doesn't blum blum all throughout the evening. Good. Yeah, as with before with the other edit, I noticed that some of the paragraphs are actually all of the paragraphs are very short. If you just look at this page, for instance, 125, yeah, so just zooming out here for a tick, putting aside the fact that this is mostly dialogue, in which case it's actually not the best example of what I'm talking about. Maybe here is a better example, where even though you have one bit of dialogue here, you've got quite a few short, snippy sentences acting as paragraphs. And I noticed that there are lots of places where simply getting rid of the carriage return and bringing all of the lines together would make it structured into what we consider a regular paragraph. Second thing, which I will talk about here, 10 minutes from the time that he finds that there's someone in his apartment, he goes to, his neighbor, has a chat, walks across the road, interacts with the clerk, sees himself dead, the clerk calls the cops, the cop arrives, they walk back to the apartment. That needs at least 25 to 30 minutes. Like, I'm just pulling that number out of my head. This is usually I guess 10 minutes between calling the cop and arriving is quite quick. 10 minutes for a cop to answer a call and arrive seems like a encompassing all of the events in this story, including the cop call as coming in at it's too quick. Yep, it's just it's a really simple fix, but 10 minutes isn't it's not a realistic time frame unless his perception of time is then maybe consider adding some self-reflexive doubt. So like, oh. What did I just paste in there? Tried to paste the entire story into this comment box. 10 minutes ago. Couldn't have been longer than that. Full stop, maybe. Something like that, for instance. That would be a, just a gentle way to encompass that sort of doubt. I couldn't believe my eyes. Thank God. God probably needs a capital G. Doesn't deserve a capital G, but usually you, if you're referring to the specific God, then it's capital G. God small is usually like a reference to just the concept of a god. I don't know, that's a weird sort of convention, isn't it? I don't really know why that's the case, to be honest. You just sort of keep seeing it repeated. Okay. So it was finally going right. I couldn't believe this, thank God. Have you ever thought to yourself, where should I put words like finally in my sentence? Thank God something was finally going right tonight versus thank God finally something was going right tonight. For instance, like that. Thank God finally something was going right tonight. Which one is better? Dunno. Grammatically they're both fine. It's one of those things that I think makes how to explain it? It's one of those sort of sentence construction things that doesn't strictly matter, but you need to pick one that has a decent flow to it. So try something, see if it feels right, and if it doesn't, then swap the words around. That's really the only thing I can suggest with these types of like sentence swaps. I tried to present myself with a bit of sanity as he approached, in spite of how cluttered my mind was. I'd like to see this demonstrated instead of being told. You can do like a how to put this into words. I'm having a bit of trouble with my own words tonight. Sometimes I like to see writing that declares itself and then follows it up with an action. It's like a mixture between telling someone and then showing someone, so it's like a 1-2 kind of punch. It's redundant, but it kind of makes some details pop a bit. So for instance, you can say, I tried to present myself with a bit of sanity as he approached, in spite of how cluttered my mind was. So adding something like, surely it would take a... Surely it would take more than a quick... So, something like, oh, I just opened up PyCharm. Okay, back in a second. Alright, that's better. It's one of those programs that lumbers itself when it opens. It's like, oh, you want to open this program? Great, sit down for 30 seconds and let me just watch the... Yeah, it's like, come on, open up. And then it's just a page full of code that you guys might not be interested in seeing. So, yeah, what I was going to say here was that this is placeholder. What I want to demonstrate here is that you can follow up a sentence that tells detail with a sentence that elaborates. It's kind of like a 1-2 punch-aroo. Because I'm Australian and that's kangaroos. So it's kind of like a it's a follow-up. But then again, it's like a sort of personal choice. Like the reason why I suggest things like this is that sometimes a declarative statement. If I can spell statement properly, that would be nice. A declarative statement often works quite well for certain situations. And if you follow it up with some good detail, it makes the whole thing stronger. My 2 cents. So when I say this is placeholder detail, I mean like I honestly don't care what you write here. I don't care if it's like a comb of the hair. I got a haircut, by the way. I don't particularly care if it's what he does. If he blows his nose on a handkerchief. If he I don't think he could do that. But he can do lots of different things to demonstrate how he makes an attempt at being like, yes, I'm calm and in control and everything is fine. Like there are lots of ways you can demonstrate that. So pick one and go with it. Now here it's where let's read this. We exchanged pleasantries and went through the usual questions. Now I confirmed myself as the caller and led him across the street to the apartment. In some ways I like how quick that is. It's like it's a no nonsense. We do the usual stuff and like let's go over. But that's probably the strongest thing about this. It's that if there's nothing interesting about how the cop is interacting with your character, then you can just declare it and skip it. Don't do this too often though, because then it reads like a synopsis, and we don't want synopsis style stories. We want stories with flesh and meat on the bone. You know, you want the interesting minute by minute detail. So for example, you can say exactly the same thing as the cop had 1,000-yard stare as if every one of his 3 AM calls was this regular. We went through the usual questions and he did nothing more than wiggle his nose, like moustached nose, at the prospect of going home early. Something like that. Like, I should probably type that down. Boop. Okay, so, we exchanged pleasantries and went through the usual questions. The cop had 1,000-yard stare as if every 3 AM call were the same. When he started his usual routine of questions, the most excitable part of him was a thin bristle moustache that danced beneath his nose like an angry worm. This is just an expansion of the idea. All I've done here is really expanded. Sometimes it's good just to declare the detail and cut to the good bits, as you originally did here. Copper Eyes talks. Now let's if nothing. Let me see if the interesting happens. Good evening, Liberta114. Hello, I saw you lurking in the chat box before on my Twitch dashboard. Good evening. Hello. Okay, interesting suggestion. I think I'm inclined to agree with you, yeah. Maybe it fits more. Or maybe that's more an American thing. Yeah, no, that's a good suggestion. I think officer, that's definitely an Americanism, that I wasn't really privy to until now. There you go. We go cops usually. Coppers! No, cops is fine. Then officers. Yeah, because Sayaka's also got officer here, so let's keep officer going straight. Good. I'm all for that. I think that's a good change. It's important to keep localization friendly. Ah, yes, that's right. It's morning for you. Morning. Actually, quite early morning, I imagine. So, thank you for making the effort to get up. Yeah, isn't it interesting? Do Australian? Just in response to this, do Australian police not like it? I wonder. Police cops. That was from The Simpsons ages ago, wasn't it? I wouldn't address an officer as a cop, because I'd probably just say... It depends if I was talking to, I suppose, like what kind of officer they were, if they were a constable or something. I address them as a title. But in my own head, I refer to them as a cop. This is interesting. I'm gonna ask people I know tomorrow. Be like, hey, what do you call a police officer? We'll have a very interesting discussion, I imagine. A very interesting discussion. Yeah. So here I was writing, if nothing particularly interesting happens in this scene, as in the officer has nothing of importance to say, then you can always squeeze in some extra character detail in another area, e.g. his appearance, as per what I suggested. Again, it's like a placeholder. You're more than welcome to come up with whatever idea suits, because I don't really mind if this detail is lost or if it's kept. I don't mind. But what I'd like to see here, instead of just being like, okay, officer arrives, we talk, and then we go across somewhere. It reads a little too much like it's a synopsis. We want more in-the-moment detail, and it doesn't really matter what that detail is, with a little asterisk on the end of that sentence. It doesn't need to matter, but if you can make it matter, that makes a story better. The less extraneous detail you add into a story, the better. So, for example, if we mention his moustache, it should probably be mentioned a bit later as well. At the very least, it sets a bit of a tone for what this officer looks like and how he might sort of, how he might look in your mind, how he's constructed based on these little details. So I confirmed myself as the caller and led him across the street to the apartment. I did notice that during the brief exchange his eyes were drawn to my neck, but I was glad he didn't press the issue. Greater problems loomed large ahead. I think that's okay. There was another semicolon used down here, I believe. But this is, but I was like, this is fine, I think, for how the semicolons are used. He picked up the conversation once. We stood together outside my front. What did I just type? Dioner. D-E-O. Well, I'm 2/5 correct. Oh dear. How embarrassing. You didn't see that? No, no. Welcome to Lyrebird Edits. The stream starts here. Hey, welcome back everyone. Okay, great. Do you know if they're armed? He asked. Something like that, for instance, might have a bit of flow to it. I don't care what he does. Taking a good whiff of the cold air as if he could smell trouble through the bricks and mortar, he turned. This is replaceable. I don't really mind. But, it's good to add a smooth linker like this between your characters arriving somewhere and then talking. So at first it's just like, he picked up the conversation when we stood together outside my front door. Do you know if they're armed? He asked. Fine, but it's a little quick. It's the details chopping forward to a little too quickly. He picked up the conversation once we stood together outside my front door, taking a good whiff of the cold air as if he could smell trouble through the bricks and mortar. He turned to me and barked, "Do you know if they're armed?" There's a lot more information in that, and crucially, it's slower. Also, padding the detail out adds a nice sense of flow. You don't want the story to skip ahead too quickly, especially if the mood isn't quite right. Especially if the mood doesn't necessitate a quick skip in the story, doesn't dictate or doesn't necessitate quicker, e.g. If it's not a tense scene, then slow it down. That's not a general rule, but if it's not a tense scene, it doesn't need to be so quick. Okay, cool. Good, good. I'm glad. I'm glad. In relation to nothing, you didn't see nothing. There's absolutely nothing that you did or did not see. Okay, very good. I haven't seen them. I woke up and just heard scratching from my bathroom. Getting out to call you is all I've gotten done since. And how long ago was this? I made a comment about 10 minutes being too short. No longer. I locked the door behind me, so they should still be in there. I shook the handle. Thankfully, it was still locked. Whoever was in there was sure to have their little game end here. This is a good use of a semicolon. I'm going to suggest that the other one, maybe we say goodbye to. But I was glad he didn't press the issue. Greater problems loomed large ahead. Replace it with a full stop. Can it function with a semicolon? Yep, it can. I like semicolons. But use them sparingly. I'm a big hypocrite when it comes to semicolons. Recently I've really been trying to push myself to use them less, so it's something that I struggle with. Because I love semicolons. I really like them. I just love them so much. Um, um, we need a bit of like a linker here between the little game ends here. For your safety, I need you to remain outside while I handle this, understand? Usually that's sort of like this, and then a linker prefaces this kind of dialogue. No, of course, you do your thing. This could be a full stop or a comma, it doesn't really matter. Maybe a full stop, that looks nicer. I handed him the keys, or I handed the keys to him, doesn't matter. And step back, watching from beside the stairs. Okay, no new paragraph. He reached for his belt and unholstered his gun. He knocked with a clear, loud pattern. Full stop. This is the police. If you are armed, drop your weapons and come up with your hands above your head. He waited a moment, but there was no response. This could be on the same line because we haven't broken dialogue. Swiftly but surely. Now, does this need a comma? Strictly speaking it does, but the phrase swiftly but surely has a lot of like, it's like an idiom almost. Well, it's not really an idiom. Slowly but surely is the way it usually goes. Swiftly but surely is kind of nice actually. It's like an inverse, and it doesn't need commas because it's one of those weird phrases that makes sense on its own, even though grammatically speaking it's not right, but it is right. A language is stupid. Whoever made English up needs to be taught a lesson in consistency or something. I don't know. I wouldn't want to learn English as a second language. The alphabet's fine, like, mwah, good job on the alphabet, English. But like, once you get past that, it's the phonetics aren't too bad. Could be worse. Yeah, English, it's hard. Even for native speakers, it's difficult. Surely but swiftly, he moved inside, escaping my view. He knocked, he waited. He needs to open the door first. It seemed quiet at first. Ooh, trying. There was a typo I missed. It's trying the door handle, wasn't it? He knocked. Oh, sorry. Yeah. I didn't see this. I didn't see this one. A fourth. Wow. Yeah. Damn. that's quite something. Wow. My hat goes off to you. That's a very impressive feat. Damn. Would you recommend learning English as a fourth language? That's what are your first three actually? Give me your first three. See, this is why short paragraphs work in a confined sense. So I don't think that made sense for the sentence, and so I just said out loud. Short sentences work and short paragraphs work if they're few and far between, if they're like the islands in the ocean of your writing. if you don't pay attention to the length of your paragraphs, you can't do little tricks like this, where a whole idea can be conveyed in a single short, and I waited. It seemed quiet at first. A second later, the lights went on, but um, everything remained blissfully silent. Oops. His focus must have shifted to the bathroom it's an implicit assumption that the reader needs to make. Mandarin, Russian, and Arabic. That's a really interesting combination of languages. Wow. With three very different alphabets. And in the case of Mandarin, no alphabet. So, wow, that's really cool. Damn. That's nice. What's the best language out of the four that you know? I'm assuming you stop at four. What's your favorite? Which one do you go back to and you're like, yep, like Arabic. That's the one. This is the language that I like the best. I think my friend was explaining that Arabic has like all of these modifiers that you put onto nouns in order to like, if I buy a car, the word car is different than if you buy the car, if he buys the car, she buys the car. I drove the car is different because it has like the verb change. I don't know. Like he explained that Arabic has these interesting sort of modifiers to their nouns. I could be remembering that completely wrong though. English, yes, that's the correct answer. English and Japanese. Ah, okay, cool. Nice. Well, I'm learning Japanese too, so um, but that's only language number two for me, and I'm still getting there, getting there, like a competent 6-year-old. Um, yeah, I think that's pretty good. Still, I mean, it's not four languages good. It's I'm not quite up there yet. Yeah, that's cool though. Yeah. There's nothing but that god-awful screeching. There was nothing but that god-awful screeching. This sentence needs to change. It needs to change it a little bit. Come out with your hands up. With your hands above your head, slowly. Soon there was nothing but that god-awful scratching. Um, This detail might need to come earlier, actually. So it seemed quiet at first. This detail contradicts the previous statement of it seemed quiet at first. I suggest having the sound wash over your MC as soon as the front door opens. They were a psychopath. The door to them, the door was probably some sort of malformed art canvas their madness spent at my expense. I'm just gonna check that that's not a doubling from one of the comments here. So it's repeated twice. Is this intentional? Now, the fact that I'm asking this question means that I as a reader, I'm not getting whether or not this is part of the story. Like, if this is an unreliable narration technique. So your narrator is unreliable, and you need to convey this somehow. If so, I kind of get it, but if not, then it needs to go. How to make things like this stronger? You drop little hints of it every now and then, and this is the first little hint that I can think of, except for the time when he entered the convenience store and he was holding the baseball bat and we didn't know he was holding a baseball bat. I quite liked it then. Usually that kind of like detail popping doesn't work for me, but I think in the context of the story it might. So have a think about how we can strengthen this up. It's a bit hard for me to suggest without knowing whether or not this is intentional. Yeah, I agree, Liberta. There needs to be a separation between this one and that one. Look, I'm just gonna get rid of it all for now. With greater force, he spoke. There needs to be comma. He spoke in RP. Come with your hands up, or forced to use forced to enter. We got force repeated twice here with different meanings. That's okay. I'd rather we didn't have that, but no voice came in response. It became clear then that my guest was not about to cooperate. Finally, he shouted. You can get rid of out. You can't really shout in. Those were his last words before there came a noise even more bone-chilling than the scratching. A scream of unbridled terror and a low, guttural gurgling. With a louder voice. That could work instead of, like, with greater force. Or you can say raising his voice with more authority, with more clarity, with more macho something, but maybe sentence. Perhaps like Or even louder. Or with a louder voice. As suggested by Liberto 114. Okay, let's continue on. Those were his last words before there came a noise even more bone-chilling than the scratching. This is a funny... there's a funny connotation to saying those were his last words. It makes me think he's dead. Like, immediately, I know he's gonna die. Which is okay. But that's the implication here. Those were his last words before there came a noise even more bone-chilling than the scratching. Before a noise... Before a... Excuse me, remembering that shriek. It was a scream of unbridled terror and a low, guttural gurgling mixed into one. I added this detail here to slow everything down, to give a sense that the narrator is narrating a past event. And also just to rework this, those were his last words before there came before there came a noise, even more bone-chilling than the scratching. It's a very thick an unwieldy sentence to be playing with. What you want instead is something that's a bit more direct and simple. Those were his last words before a bone-chilling noise drowned out the scratching. It's more simple, it reads a bit more fluidly, and even though you haven't packed as much bone-chilling detail into the sentence, you've got the general message across without it becoming unwieldy. You don't want your reader to be weighed down with the sheer volume of a sentence. You want it to sort of breathe a bit. Excuse me, I'll just check something. The sounds rang out in slow motion, but my mind acted without delay. It's okay. I was on my feet, making a break for the stairs before I knew it. I was desperate to find a means of escape is a very reflexive sentence. It's okay. I think it fits the retelling narrative. It's not a first-person present, remember? So in that case, because if you say this sentence out loud to yourself, I was desperate to find a means of escape, you sound quite sort of posh and a bit too over the top. But because he's narrating an event from the present, an event that happened here in the past, the narrator can afford themselves to be a bit more sort of talk at themselves a bit more. This is one of those examples of that sentence. As I hit the bottom of the steps, I saw something that decreased my options to a singular course. Now, we haven't read this yet, so From here downwards, we're gonna just read for a bit and go up and do another edit. As I hit the bottom of the steps, I saw something that decreased my options to a singular course. My car model, it was parked just ahead. I made a quick dash for it, twisting between other cars before I got to the driver's side door. I fumbled around, praying I had the keys with me. My left pocket jingled harmonious bliss as I patted it down. I did. I ripped the keys out and furiously jammed them around in the dark to open the door, scraping the car beside me as it flew open wildly. I had more important things on my mind than feeling sorry for the owner. Dick. That's not a nice thing to do. I threw myself inside, because you can't claim insurance on that stuff, you know? Like, you wake up and you go downstairs and your car is damaged and you're like, well shit, like, what do I do? How do I prove that I didn't do this to my own car? So, you know, GG. Very nice. I threw myself inside, slammed the door shut, cranked the engine, and floored it in reverse. My grip on the wheel was shaky at best, my muscles worked against me. I turned a short corner, the exit just ahead. I just about shit myself as I hit the gas. To my side I heard scratching on my door. I didn't turn to look, but it brought me to let out a horrified cry. I zoomed forward at breakneck pace, colliding briefly with the side of another car. Before I was out and onto the main road, I didn't much care where my muddled mind took me next, as long as it was away from this fucking nightmare. Some time passed, but I had travelled a fair distance away from the apartment. I had just finished passing through the last major streets on the outskirts of the city, violating a number of traffic laws along the way, passing through red lights, overtaking cars, and skidding onto sidewalks, fortunately all but empty at this time of day. I finally escaped to the country roads, finding some minor comfort as the presence of other vehicles reduced. I never stopped for a moment to consider what was behind me. I only cared for what lay ahead, and nothing else. I kept following small country roads I had never seen before, bringing the car to a stop only when I was hit with a strange feeling. I felt strangely safe. My fear returned to a manageable level, but another emotion took its place: confusion. I had no less than a million questions, all of them battling it out for order of importance, but one cut above the rest. Use colons here instead of semicolons. Just what the fuck sort of night was this? I took my shivering hands off the wheel and sat back, breathless. My arms swung loose as energy departed my body in a flash. Adrenaline was a hell of a thing. Semicolon or hyphen here is fine, but let's put a hyphen. Before anything else, I felt compelled to get out and scour the roads for the side of anything that might have followed me. Dark as it was, I was sure I was alone. I hadn't seen another passing car for at least 20 minutes. The dirt road I was on was relatively open, absent of large bushes or trees that someone could hide behind. I hadn't seen another passing car for a street. I became slowly more confident as I looked around, greeted by the sights and sounds of absolute silence, just the low hum of the engine. Turning back, I saw the scratches. The deformed metal glinted in the moonlight. I tried not to think about it. I want more detail there. I returned to my seat, letting out something of a devilish laugh. Delightfully devilish. In knowing I had escaped whoever was out for me, but my expression remained glum, I knew this was not the end of things. I sat still, taking in deep breaths, attempting to swallow my stress, but it rose above them. I tried a few minor stretching exercises, but they did me no good. There was only one way to kill this kind of stress: a good smoke. In my country, we call it a smoko. Smoko. I was relieved to find I still had my lighter on me, and having remembered to pick some up, I had a fresh pack. I never had more reason to smoke in my life. That's right, from the grocery store. From the grocers across the road. I sat there in peaceful silence, inhaling and exhaling with practiced rhythm. an inner calm collecting and growing within me, just me, a trail of smoke, of soft smoke. My mind, just me, a trail of soft smoke, and my mind, my maze of a mind, the pieces laid before me. If you don't mind, I just want to go and get a snack. Just a nice snack, you know? Something to keep me awake. I'm just a bit tired today. Excuse me for that. I'll be back in a few minutes. Okay, good. Well, I'm back. We're going to turn this into a social eating stream, and also AMSR. I'm branching out on Lyrebird edits. You know, you come for the edits. That's what we're all here for. It's just, you know, bit of editing, and then every so often we're just gonna like yeah, we're gonna just eat some chocolate. You know, that's what we're gonna do. Yeah. I don't know if social eating is still a thing on Twitch. It's like it's a huge group. I saw the group up and running. Yeah. It's kind of a nice idea, actually. Thank goodness, I can hear myself crunch in my ear. Okay, so... I was thinking outside what I should do for the rest of this stream. I feel as though I can do more and more and more line edits like this. But I have a feeling maybe I should just talk more about the narrative flow. From here onwards, at least, when he gets into his car and he drives away, strictly speaking, there's nothing too wrong functionally with the sentences, but I think I just want to reiterate how short these paragraphs are. I can go through and make changes to the individual lines and do a line edit, but doing so kind of means that later on in the editing process, when these little nuggets of paragraphs or eggs of paragraphs hatch and become fully fleshed butterflies. my goodness. Oh dear. Eggs and butterflies. What on earth is going on in my head? Yeah. you get the metaphor, right? Yeah, good. Yeah, you're all very smart people. Once these develop into properly formed paragraphs, that's when you really go in and attack the line edits. Because like right now, I could go through and take them apart one by one, but this would sort of undermine the fact that they would then need to be rewritten into paragraphs. When you rewrite a sentence into a paragraph form, um, it's basically just rewriting it. So I sort of feel like I'd suggest things that are fitting for the current form, but I want the current form to change, and then we can focus on the sentence structures. So right now I think I'm going to take a bit more of a sort of like a hands-off approach to the actual lines themselves, and I'll talk more about the narrative. And that way I can move through it at a reasonable pace too. But I think, look, from Sayaka's perspective, and from Sayaka being the author of the story, I've said lots about how we can make the paragraphs shorter and more... Sorry, no, not shorter. How we can improve on them and expand them out, add more detail. How the flow of the ideas needs to sort of run together. I've spoken a lot about this in the last stream, and I think I reiterated it a lot in this stream too. So I'll just reiterate once more. There are ideas here that can be fleshed out, especially in this sort of sequence of events here, which we'll look at now. What happens is so for example, that should be a paragraph. Not 3. Now I turned a short corner just the exit just ahead, but I just about shit myself as I hit the gas. To my side, I heard scratching on my door. This is pretty major. I didn't turn to look. Why? Why the bloody hell not? Why not? Why not? Why aren't we turning to see? This looks like a snarky comment. So I'll rephrase it so that I can convey my tone. I sure as hell would be looking. Is there a specific reason why he doesn't? I think I certainly would. Give it the old look with the eyeballs. Yeah, I agree, and I like that too. So Liberto is saying that the actual culprit here is quite vague. Like I'm convinced it's not human, but I have absolutely nothing to base that on, and I like that. I like the mystery of what's going on here. It's spooky. And there's one detail that I want to address here. Why don't you notify us on Discord when you're live? I'm sorry, Clam. I'm sorry. I could easily turn this back on you and be like, what kind of fan are you that you didn't know that I start at 9 PM my time on Thursday nights? What kind of fan are you that you don't know that I have that stream schedule on my dashboard, Twitch dashboard, which you should all go to if you haven't been already, and you can join my Discord. Did I technically notify? I guess so. Yeah, I'm going to regret. Huh. No, I did sort of. I didn't do like an at mention, but yeah. I don't at everyone. Oh, there you go. I'll remember that for the future. I won't do it now, but I'll do it for the next start of the stream. I'll make your phone beep, and I will alert you to the fact that I'm doing the lyrebird thing. Actually, I wonder if that's why Anime girl hasn't popped in yet. That's surprising because she was here earlier tonight. Yesterday. Anyway, I'll do an edit run. It's no worries, Clem. Also, welcome back. Thank you for joining the stream after I berated you. You missed the AMSR. I had chocolate and foil and everything. You missed me eating. So before you came on, we were just talking about the section of the story here where our main character talks with the police officer who's arrived to, I guess, coordinate a response. They go over to the main character's apartment. Cop goes inside. Excuse me, the officer goes inside. They hear the scratching at the bathroom door. 2 shots are fired. Main character has no idea what's going on. Runs outside, gets in the car, drives away. But then, as he's just on the main road, there's the jump scene moment where, like, there's scratching on his door. But he doesn't turn to look at it. But it brought me to let out a horrified cry. Zoom forward, that's fine. Colliding briefly with the side of another car, fine. Didn't want to look back, okay. I saw the scratches, the deformed metal glinting in the moonlight. I want more detail. I would like some more detail here. If you can give us a little droplet about what the scratches look like. That'll you don't want to give, like, there's the old rule in horror that you don't show the monster up front, and that makes it spookier. You don't even have to describe what they strictly look like, but you can describe their depth, e.g. you can... And in doing so, hint at the unreal nature of this thing. I'm assuming it's an unreal thing. It doesn't matter if it's not, but you can kind of, like... yeah. I'm suggesting to get rid of this semicolon here and putting in a full stop. Okay, because it's too long. Break it up. Be mindful that you can use colons here. Yep, good. So he starts smoking. He lights up a cigarette and smokes. This should be 1 paragraph. So I guess from this point on, I'll talk a lot more about the, yeah, just the developmental aspects. I looked out towards the stars. They were light, bright, and sparkling in the moonlight. I like how that sounds. It was a beautiful sight. I only wished they held some answers, but it was not to be. There was a slight hint of disappointment as I reached into the back and came out empty. My smoke break had come to an end. Had to come to an end eventually. Holy crap, how many cigarettes did he smoke? Did he just chain smoke an entire pack? You know what I'm gonna write? Holy smokes! Oh dear. Did he I'm really upset at myself. Oh, did he just chain smoke a whole pack? Or do you guys have like different packs? Like, can you buy like a $5 or something? I don't know. I know. I'm sorry. As soon as I thought of it, I could feel my heart just squeeze uncomfortably. Like, oh, it's gonna hurt, but I'm gonna have to say it. I've got a really good friend of mine who loves puns. He's like a pun machine. He kills me every time he brings a pun out. But they're so good. I can't hate his pun abilities. But I do deeply appreciate them. But my goodness, just so it leeches into me sometimes. He's the pun master, and I'm basically like the pun servant sweeping the floors. Yeah, exactly. So when you say "holy smokes," it has to be "holy smokes," like something like that. You know what I mean. Well, I mean, you wrote it, so yes. Holy smokes! How are you, Clem? By the way, are you good? I didn't even ask Liberta how Liberta was. Hope everyone is good. Please feel free to type your emotional mood into the chat box. That would make everything flow nicely. Our conversations. As a completely normal human being, I enjoy asking people how they are and responding in kind with my own emotional state. It's good for building communicative bridges between humans. There's a good subreddit actually called Totally Not Robots. It's about humans talking to each other, and then they're totally not robots. Don't you mistake them for robots. Oh, big. How Laya good. Thank you. Liberta good. Everyone is good. Everyone is good. But this is, wow. How far are you through it? Are you close to 50k? You've got another 13 days. Just copy paste Screw Flanders over and over again. That gets the job done. The cigarettes worked a real treat. This is where you put a semicolon, and I felt myself lift from the deepest depths of my troubles, returning to a reasonable state of mind. The ragged clouds still raged high above, but I didn't expect them to clear up soon. Still raged above. Wait, I thought he was looking at the light, bright, sparkling moonlight. Well, strictly speaking, he doesn't say that there's no clouds, but this implies that, the ragged clouds still raged high above. Last paragraph implied to me that it was a beautiful, clear night. Strictly speaking, there's no indication of clouds, but, maybe drizzle some cloud detail into the last paragraph if you're going to mention it again here. But I didn't expect them to clear up so soon. Perhaps after all this was over, it would... The ragged clouds still raged high above, but I didn't expect them to clear up so soon. Perhaps after all of this was over, if it would ever be over, I could finally think critically about my next move, come up with a plan. I knew things were far too contrived for me to just be the unfortunate victim of some escaped lunatic. Now, the word contrived is an interesting one. It actually has a bit of a funny connotation to it. It's to create or bring about by deliberate use of skill and artifice. It's managed to do something foolish or create an undesirable situation. The impression that I have of the word contrived is that it's artificially constructed in a bad way to be conceited. So the word that you're going for here is orchestrated. I'm not going to suggest this as an edit because I think either works, but maybe if that same level of baggage associated with this word keeps popping up for other readers, then maybe change it. But at the moment, I don't know. Ooh, you've got a long way to go. What's your usual words per day kind of metric that you go by? I guess if you're writing to spec in a genre that you're very familiar with, you can kind of just churn it out, can't you? You know, easier said than done, right? Just churn 3K, yeah. You'll get there if you hit that 3K mark. When you ghostwrite a story, do you have to return it in a state that is complete? So by that I mean, do you return a draft to them, or do you have to edit it first? So is it their responsibility to have the story edited, or is it your responsibility to write the story and to have it at such a level that it's like, you don't need to edit this, just publish it? If the latter is the case, that's extremely difficult. If the former is the case, and you just have to churn the story out and hand it back, that's more reasonable, I think. But I'd be interested to hear what you have to say. You can make this do a run-on sentence. The comma works, the hyphen works, doesn't really matter what you stick in there. It's a bit of a funny... It's a thing that works in human speech, but on the page it's a bit unwieldy. You just gotta put it down whatever way you see fit. I could finally think critically about my next move, come up with a plan. I knew things were far too contrived. Someone had it out for me, someone with a flair for the dramatic. Whoever it was, they would not rest until they had me. I knew they were dangerous, at least if that officer had truly been... I didn't want to think about what really happened back there. The thought all too painful. Just, no. Do that. Short, snappy, nice. Single sentence paragraph. Works well. You can get rid of a second linker ellipsis as well. I was not prepared to fall asleep on some empty road far from safety. One paragraph. I'm just doing this intermittently. I'm not gonna do this every time, but starting to join paragraphs together. This would probably need a linker with what comes above it. I didn't want to think about what really happened back there. Instead, I wanted to focus on how to get out of here. But I was not prepared to fall asleep out on some empty road far from safety. I was horribly tired as it stood, and collapsing with exhaustion was all too likely if I did not act quickly. But first I had to find out where I was. I brought up the car's GPS system. I'll make a comment about this. Sometimes I feel as a reader that the author isn't giving me a clear sense of how he's actually feeling in the past tense. To resolve that feeling, I suggest demonstrating how tired he is. Is his vision swimming? Is his head reeling, etc., etc., etc.? Rather than just, I'm really tired, I might fall over, it's more like, my vision swam like a school of fish scared at the prospect of a very hungry shark. Something like that, I don't know. But that way you can demonstrate or show to us how he's feeling. I think that's probably the wise thing to do, from my impression of the nature of the job. Like, you wouldn't be comfortable handing it back to someone and being like, look, it's a first draft, give me the money, sort of thing. You know, you do quality work, it comes back on you, and it's like, you get a reputation for quality, which is what you're after. Everyone wants quality. Yeah, cool. So that's a nice sort of 1-2 tandem writing and editing kind of session going on. Yeah, that's cool. Nice, that's a good way to do it. I like that idea. Give me a sec, I want to check something. Okay, good. Just seeing what programs I had open in the background. I look closer. First I had to find out where I was. I brought up the car's GPS system and zoomed out using a touchscreen. It was a fair distance outside of the city on the east side. I looked somewhere closer and soon realized I wasn't far from my parents' country estate. Actually, parents, it's possessive. This one here. I moved away some years ago, but we kept in close contact. What I wouldn't get to see them again and feel their warm embrace. My mind was set. I wanted to see them. I would not pass up a chance to see a friendly face. It's a bit redundant. I resumed off into the night once more. My purpose lay clear. This sentence here and this sentence here say the same thing basically, but I wouldn't give to see them again and feel their warm embrace. I would not pass up a chance to see a friendly face. It's even got the same sort of cadence to it as well. Just delete one of them, and the other will take its place and make it stronger because of the contrast that comes from not having it doubled up twice. Cool. Hey, just do you mind if you just give me a minute just so I can reply to someone on my phone? I'm sorry, I'm being very rude, aren't I? I should be giving you my full 3 hours of um of like condensed liar concentration, but I just got to take this. Got to take this call. It's an important call from business people in business land. No, no, it's not, but I should take it. International business doesn't business itself. You just gotta hit the business hard every day. The business comes and it doesn't stop. No, it's just a friend from uni. We're discussing something. In fact, it wasn't even a call. It's just messaging back and forward. I don't know why I said call. My brain's not working so good tonight. My words and everything aren't going too well. But hopefully my editing is up to scratch. It's as long as one thing is working, and that's all good. So Liberta makes an interesting point about the the sort of the convenient nature of how everything is coming along. It just so happens that he drives down these roads that, remember, he's never seen before, and he tells us as such. Um, I finally escaped to the country roads, finding some minor comfort as the presence of other vehicles reduced. I never stopped for a moment to consider what was behind me. I only kept following small country roads I'd never seen before, bringing the car to a stop only when I hit the feeling. So if he ends up... If he ends up close by to his parents' estate, would it be reasonable to assume that he's driven somewhere along these lines before? This is in reference to just what happens a couple of pages later. And I agree, it feels a little convenient. The saving grace of these types of conveniences may be the fact that this is an unreliable narrator telling us detail about the story. So, if we have reason to suspect that his narration is unreliable, that kind of like... it's actually a good example of contrived narrative. You know, it's a little too neat. It's a little too convenient. But that can be actually used to good effect if, especially if the narrator is unreliable. Um, I think we've got a very winding narrative going on here. It's not the journey, it's the Wait, no, it's not the destination. It's the journey. In fact, this story should just be the struggles to get to the parents' house. I mean, he knocks on the front door, he walks inside, the end. We don't get any resolution to the monster, we don't get anything else, we just have like, I tried to get to my parents' house, and these things happened, and then I got there in the end. And then there's no resolution to the story. It'd be a very modern, very meta kind of story. I don't know how to feel about that. Probably very angry. Very angry. And then some literary critic calls it a brave, inspirational work of 21st century postmodernism. Stranger things have happened. So this is something that we have to consider about the parents' house. Let's keep that idea floating for a little while. I'm not prepared to strike it out and be like, no, don't do this. This is a silly. I don't know where the narrative is going. So let's keep that sort of idea floating away, and especially the idea that if you want it to work, introducing a stronger, unreliable narrator may help ease the tension that some readers may feel, and probably me too, in having like the convenient nature of the parents' place. We'll talk about that a little later. An hour later, I had arrived. Okay, so no bears, no hitchhiking. The sight alone brought me satisfaction, as if driving here had been a great achievement. I suppose making it here without passing out was an achievement in and of itself, or just in itself. I started towards the front door, stopping briefly as my heart fluttered. Their car was not parked outside. They would be home. I knew they would be. It better be. There are 3 semicolons in this whole paragraph here. This is too many semicolons. This is from the semicolon boy. Like, I will be the semicolon cheerleader for anyone. Stephen King says that, you know, you have the 1 semicolon that you use in your career. I say, Stephen King, what are you talking? You don't know any writing. Who even is Stephen King? I will always defend the semicolon. But there are too many. There are too many here. So an hour later, I had arrived. The sight alone brought me satisfaction, as if driving here had been a great achievement. I suppose making it here without passing out was an achievement in and of itself. I started towards the front door, stopping briefly, as my heart fluttered the car was not parked outside. So, I started towards the front door, but I noticed that their car was not here. My heart fluttered. They would be home. I knew they would. They better be. But if their car's not here... if their car isn't here, why does he think they're home? Or inside? Unless it's in a garage or something. Shocking. Well, but I hope it was a good semicolon, because you're only allowed 1. Otherwise, the Stephen King police will be breaking through your windows and just they'll be ripping shit up. They'll be pushing over your bookcases, lighting them on fire. They'll be on your computer, hacking past the password and taking all of your stories. And you know, you don't want to use 2. You don't want to get on Stephen King's bad side. He's got some powerful people that he's in control of. So it's 1 semicolon, and I hope it was a good one. There are 3 here, so I'm in this paragraph here. So I'm pretty sure Sayaka's already dead. You know, rest in peace, Sayaka. It was a grisly death at the hands of the Stephen King police. But yeah, no, really, there are lots of there are a lot of semicolons here. And of course, I'm not knocking Stephen King. He makes an excellent point about semicolons. Be careful with how you use your semicolons, or he'll come and kill you. Seems reasonable, doesn't it? I knocked and waited some more. As the seconds ticked by, my hands began tingling, moving about on their own, anticipation cutting deep. It's unusual. I knocked again loudly. I knocked loudly again. They would have heard that. They just had to. I'm gonna suggest putting a italics. Classy. That's some nice italicized writing. They would. So why am I suggesting this? There's no real. I mean, like, last time I made the style choice to say don't use capitals, but then I thought about it the other day off stream, and I'm like, oh, no, you can use capitals, but sometimes italics just look a bit better. The SK police. They would come down the stairs any second and greet me, but no, they weren't home. Makes sense, given that the car's not here. I choked back tears, the disappointment all too real. I drew my fists into balls and cursed, just plain furious. I could sleep in safety now, but it was a hollow victory. Huh? Can he get in? I came here to see the people I loved and cared about, but they were gone. I couldn't catch a break with anything. I kept a spare key in my wallet, which let me in. This is a funny. The boats in the harbour that were blue. I think grammatically this means that the wallet lets you in. But you need the comma there, and it needs to be that. Anyway, let's talk about this. This is a little bit messy. I'm not too sure what he was expecting. He comes to the home and he doesn't see the car there. That should be the point at which he goes like, oh, hang on, are they going to be there? I started knocking on the front door, but all I heard was the sound of my my fist on wood echoing through the house, so I knocked again and again and again, but nothing. No, this couldn't be happening. I needed them to let me in. I needed to come in and see them once again to be safe. But no, of course they wouldn't be there. Their car wasn't here and I was all alone. That's a full paragraph. Then you go into, at the very least I could sleep in safety, but it was a hollow victory. So, this needs to be cleaned up, and I suggest going back and thinking of one paragraph to it all comes back to that one paragraph. Write this down as a single idea. What's the central notion that you're trying to convey here? One, two. I'm gonna highlight this all in pink. What's the central notion that we're trying to convey here? He arrives at the home. He goes to the home and finds his parents absent. Which makes sense given the fact that their car isn't here. These 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. These 6 paragraphs should be one, and it should read a little bit like this. Actually, it's even... This is probably the first paragraph with some details here, and then this one here. Like, maybe even... No, this can be its own paragraph. I don't want to write down what I think it should be. I think there should be one paragraph, and the way that the paragraph should work is that it should set up the fact that he's knocking, the sound echoes through, and nothing happens, and he feels the desolation eat into him. I kept a spare key in my wallet, which let me in. My normal key surely still stuck on my keychain back at the apartment. Okay, separate pair of keys. I stepped into the kitchen thinking of the lights. The lack of paperwork was laid. Sorry, it's these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These 5 paragraphs should be one. And after you finish reconstructing it, then we can go through sentence by sentence and see how it all flows together. I kept a spare key in my wallet. I wouldn't even dance around the which that question. I kept a spare key in my wallet and let myself in. My normal key's stuck in... unless we need to know this, I'd suggest getting rid of it. To the lights, a stack of paperwork was laid out on the kitchen table, catching my eye. This is passive. Try and rewrite it so that it's active. A stack of paperwork grew like mold over the... Sorry, mold. Catching my eye is redundant if it's a bit... Yep. I recognize these sorts of documents. They were legal files, invoices, copies of a will. Interesting how you recognize them. Why did my parents have these out? They could only have been for my grandfather who died late the previous year, but I was sure they had sorted that stuff out months ago. Whatever the case, I didn't look into them very far. I could hardly concentrate. I locked the door, the front door, and checked the house thoroughly, trying to shake free from the worry that came with being home alone at night. The house was empty, affording me the slightest of relief. I stumbled up the stairs, half asleep, straight into the spare bedroom. I collapsed on the bed, asleep the instant I hit the sheets, escaping into the realm of the unconscious mind. Lots of, I locked, the house was empty, I stumbled, I collapsed. watch out for starting sentences with I. Watch out for repeating sentences that begin with I did this. I, verb, thing. Or just even like that begin with I. That makes sense. Good. Give me a sec. So then we've got a dream sequence here. This is taken an unusual turn. Excuse me, my shoelace got caught in the bottom of my chair. This has taken an interesting turn. We started off within like a sort of apartment-style structured building, and a very clear sense of where everything was. We were in a city. Well, that was all implied detail, of course. But there was nothing to suggest that the narrative will kind of lurch out into, now all of a sudden I need to escape and I'm out. And I find myself nowhere. Now I'm calm. Oh, I'll pop into mum and dad's because it's close by. It's an unusual sort of lurch into a new territory for the story that feels like it feels like we shouldn't be here in a sense. Now, I'm not sure at this point in the story where it's going. I have a feeling that Sayaka's going to write into a slightly like unbalanced narrative, in the sense that's not a negative description. It's more like a sort of I'll take a step back. I think Sayaka is going to take this story into a territory where the facts of the story are fluid, and what's actually happened is a bit sort of, how shall we say, the narrator isn't quite sure of themselves, or they're purposefully lying to you. It's that unreliable narrator element. In which case, stories like this work best under that careful guidance of an unreliable narrator. Now, there are many ways that you can achieve this and pull it off. One is to have a think about the tone of the story. Now, just before I go on, I'll make a note of the voice note. At 1 hour 53 minutes. 1 hour 52 mins voice note. So I'll sort of give that little introduction again. The story has lurched into a bit of an unfamiliar territory, and it feels as though that as a reader I'm not sure where it's going. I don't know why it's important that we're back in his parents' estate. I don't know why all these new details are so important. We started off with a very interesting and tense setup where we had something in this man's house that spooked him. And he goes around to his neighbor, the grocer across the road, goes back with his police officer. So it's very contained within a sense of itself. It's in a location. Everything is sort of set up to exist in that world. I mean, all of a sudden we've taken our character, completely over here, plonk them down, make them calm down, and then be like, oh yeah, I can go to my parents' house now. It's a it's a contrived narrative, and I use that word because it's used here as well. Let me find it. Where is that word? Where is it? There you go. I could finally think critically about my next move, come up with a plan. I knew things were far too contrived for me just to be the unfortunate victim of some escaped lunatic. Someone had it out for me, someone with a flair for the dramatic. This reads a bit metafictive. This leads me to believe that Sayaka, the author of this story, is planning for an unreliable narration. Now, that would make more sense if that was the case, because you can easily work a more contrived story into a more organic story by having a narrator that is on your side and understands that, okay, this is weird, bear with me for a few minutes, here's the direction I'm going to take the story in. Unreliable narrators are really almost indispensable tools to do that. Now, how do you pull off an unreliable narrator? A couple of things. Tone is really important. So a slightly humorous, self-reflexive tone can be a really useful paintbrush to work with when you're painting these scenes. So for instance, when he walks into the grocer's and he says hello to the girl behind the counter and she reacts to him, adding a bit of humor to that, or like when the fact that he doesn't realize he's carrying a baseball bat can be a funny thing, so play up the humor in that. So to pull, you can make use of a few good tools. One, tone. Humorous. Or just humor itself. Humor helps. Draw attention to the twisting nature of the story. It allows the reader to feel as though they are being guided carefully through a series of events that, although contrived, and I put this in quotation marks because I don't want to convey the bad contrived. It's just contrived. It's a specific construction. Are going to make sense later on. The second thing that you can do is to introduce inconsistencies. Introduce inconsistencies that your reader, if I can spell inconsistencies properly, that would be good. Introduce inconsistencies that your reader will intuitively understand. Excuse me, my spelling is all over the place. Will intuitively understand as part of the narrator's voice. Like, here is probably the best example I can think of when I got rid of, excuse me, let me find it. Yeah. How long had the scratching been going on for? Whoever was in there must have kept at it since I left. Maybe they were treating the door like some sort of malformed art canvas. They were a psychopath. The door to them was probably some sort of malformed art canvas that madness spent at my expense. Now, this reads as though... Sorry, I'm tying my shoe at the same time. If you're wondering what I'm doing. This reads as though it is a typo. Like, the sentence is just copy-pasted in a weird sense. Now, however, this may be one of those unreliable narrator things where he skips over himself and repeats himself. Very clever, if so, but as a reader I wasn't convinced that was the case. It reads like a mistake. To back me up on that, I have the other version of this story here, where the Um, no, no one did make a comment about that. So there are two here's the malformed art canvas, malformed art canvas. I thought someone also made a comment about it, but they just say, it feels like that needs justification for the thought. I'm just wondering why it's repeated twice. I don't get that. But I think it may be that unreliable narrator. So, you're kind of halfway there in terms of... Oops. Halfway there in terms of getting everything introduced as an unreliable narrator. We've got the baseball bat, which is probably the biggest unreliable narrator element. The baseball bat thing is probably the strongest. You can make details change. Hair color of characters, for instance. Where apartments are, what kind of car he has. Every little droplet of incorrect info helps the reader establish in their heads that this story is purposefully incorrect. The more the better up until a point. You saturate it after a while, and it's an intuitive point too. But right now we only have one example. Right now we only have one, maybe two if we count... Excuse me for using numbers here, but I'm just lazy. Right now we only have one, maybe two, if we count the, what exactly was it? The malformed art canvas. Solid instance of unreliable narration. I think they're the two really good things to consider with unreliable narrators. Now, this is all based on an assumption that Sayaka is going for an unreliable narrator here, or a narrator that has a bit of creative liberty in how they look back at the events that have happened to them in the past. If the narrator isn't unreliable and they're telling a straight story, then I think we need a stronger motive to make this feel more natural. If the story doesn't rely on an unreliable narrator twisting the details to suit them, and instead the story is played straight, then I think we're going to need a bit of a stronger link between your character, your MC, escaping his home and accidentally driving towards his parents' place. The link just needs to be stronger. I've also figured out what the will documents are. He's dead. I recognize these sorts of documents because his granddad is dead, right? But I'm sure that if he actually paid more attention, he'd realize that these were his own death notes, I'm guessing. If that's the case, then we need to make... Yeah, I didn't look very far, I could hardly concentrate, yeah. What I mean here, I don't need to make that a proper comment. He's dead. And he's been resurrected somehow. The thing scratching in the bathroom, not sure what that is. But I still don't know where it's going or what to suggest in that case. I was about to use numbers, or if I ought to be worded. We talked about that last time, didn't we? That's the conclusion we pretty much came to last time, yeah. Room numbers, that's a funny one. You know the 1408, the Stephen King story. Maybe that's a case where you can use numbers. Last time we were discussing whether or not you could use numbers in a call sign. 1023 was what the police officer said. But that was a dialogue, though. If it's dialogue, you can't speak a number. It looks weird. That's just convention, though. Yeah, it's one of those weird rules. I don't really know. Let's dig a little deeper. Let's enter this dream sequence. Actually, just while I remember. Yeah, so I'll conclude this by saying I'm still not entirely certain where the story's going, and so I can't make a proper comment about the appropriateness of this driving out of a city and accidentally ending up at your mum and dad's place. I mean, it's certainly not as contrived as driving senselessly and stopping, looking up, I'm at my parents' place. Although that would maybe make a bit more, that's so contrived that your reader goes, okay, something a bit weird is happening. 3. If you're clever, you can actually make a story so contrived that your reader understands the artificial nature of it, and crucially they enjoy it. E.g., get your character to drive senseless and stop outside his parents' place. If you do this right, your reader will get that the narrator is unreliable. Blech. Right, so if you're clever, you can actually make a story that's so contrived that your reader understands the artificial nature of it and they enjoy it. So e.g., you get the character to drive away from danger, senseless, and stop outside a dark house. Surprise! It's his parents' house. Place. What a stroke of luck. He looks up and wonders how he got here. Yep. So if you do this right, your reader will get that the narrator is unreliable. It takes a bit of practice to pull that off convincingly. You need to have a narrator that's more involved in getting your reader to understand Um, in order to really pull this off, you need to get your narrator to actively try and make the reader, or to actively try, you need to get your narrator to speak as though he is actively trying to get the reader on his side of events. So instead of it just being like, I did this, I did that, I did that, it's more like, and you wouldn't believe what happened next, but this, like, in the stupor that I was in, I drove to my parents' place. As stupid as it sounds, I looked up and I was here. You don't have to do it, but it's just a path that you can take. Yep, I agree with Cuddly Clem's assessment there. Yep. Yep, also good. That gets the Lyrebird tick of approval. This thing here. I hope Sayaka understands what I mean by this. I think it's clear what I'm going for here. This turns it into a different style of story though. I wish I had like a little stamp or something that I could use in situations like this. I love a Lyrebird stamp of approval. Let's read on a little more just after I check my phone. Excuse me. Bright tendrils twisted and contorted into colourful shapes. Faint outlines of something unclear met, setting off a wave of astonishingly striking orange. As they met, they reverberated a booming roar. The sound surrounded me, spreading wide, consuming all in its path. The colourful shapes quickly washed out, losing their colour, slipping away into the same shade of unimpressive grey. And then I felt it. My keen senses were lost to the void. The sharp edges blurred, until nothing remained but the darkest abyss. I fell. This is a paragraph. This is nice. Good. And, you know, sure, like, parts of it are a little sort of, thick, and maybe a few words here and there need to be changed, but look, if your paragraphs could look more like this, and have more of a sort of core idea. So you see, when I was reading this, every sentence flowed into the next with its own sense of addition into the central idea. This is what a paragraph should be. So this is going to be a positive comment. This is what a good paragraph should be, where the sentences the sentences flow into each other, they add to a central idea. The word choice itself may need a bit of work, but right now I want you to really focus on getting the rest of the story, to look like this. Not so much for the thick word choices or vivid imagery, but rather from the sense that the paragraph introduces an idea, and the sentences that make it up add to the idea. This is good. I think that's probably the thing. Like if nothing else happens from this edit, not so much like the developmental stuff or the line by line stuff. We can work on those in subsequent edits when everything is a bit more sort of constructed. Right now, I think the biggest thing the story needs is a sense that it's put together in a way in which the ideas are delivered to the reader and they understand where the story's going. The way that a story is constructed definitely affects how the narrative elements really sit with the reader. If the narrative is comprised of these, and I'm sorry, I'm sorry if I sound like a broken record, and you know, I keep talking about these paragraphs, and you must be thinking in your mind, oh my god, Lyrebird, just stop talking about the paragraphs, stop talking about the paragraphs. But the reason why I'm talking about the paragraphs is because it's the core of this story. It's the core of every story, but it's the thing here that prevents the reader from accessing the story. You don't want to construct things such that you give your reader an excuse not to engage with the story. The elements are all here. We've got a spoopy monster that I want to know more about, an interesting scenario in which an undead man rises from his slumber and tries his like he doesn't figure he can't figure out that he's dead, and he goes to his neighbor, he goes to the grocers, the police officer, and there are all these really good elements here. And perhaps with the exception of stumbling into his parents' house, everything, every idea is set up in a way that makes sense to me as a reader. Why I keep talking about the paragraphs, though, is that the difference between a story and a really good story is in its delivery and how it's constructed for the reader. Because if we want narrative details, we can read synopses, we can read a summary of what happens in the story, like what I just delivered to you then. But the real juice of a story is how your reader feels as they're reading the story. Sure, like, the story can be complicated and interesting and intricate and fun, but unless it's written in such a way that highlights those narrative elements, the story itself doesn't function. I'm not saying this doesn't function. I'm saying that you can shine the story and make it glow, and that's what a good story is. The flip side of that, and it's something that I've been thinking about recently, is that your story can be very well constructed in a in a paragraph structural sense, but the narrative can be a bit boring. So you need both, of course. You need a good idea, but you need to execute your idea well. And I spoke about this a bit on Pumpkin Pie Addicts draft a couple of weeks back. The story was interesting, but the way in which it was told was very quick. It lacked a bit of pace. The paragraphs were very short. And I remember talking a lot about that too. It's such a fundamental thing about how a story is told. Paragraph structure, because if you don't get it right, if I don't get a sense of pace to the story, it's a bit like I'm just reading the facts of the story rather than being there and experiencing the story with him, this main character. Which is why when you see a paragraph like this, it's long, it's full of ideas. It's not long. It's not very long. It's the longest paragraph probably in the story though. And it's like a breath of fresh air, because it's the one time in the story that I really feel like I'm understanding something inside the story universe. What do you guys think here in the spectators box? Do you think that's a reasonable thing to suggest? Is to look at the paragraph structure first and then sort of work into the narrative, work into the word choices. I think that's kind of what I'd suggest Sayaka works on. Ah, yeah, if I was affiliated, I could get a stamp made, couldn't I? I haven't touched affiliation yet. I've been offered for months, like since the end of last year. I just haven't got around to it. And maybe I don't want to do it. I don't know. I'm not sure. Yay! Validation, good. No, it's also good to know that I'm not talking out of my bum here. Like other people agree too, which is nice. Yeah. To illustrate that, I'm gonna read out these, like everything on this page here again. Just I'll read it out. Right tendrils twisted and contorted into colourful shapes. Faint outlines of something unclear met, sending off a wave of astonishingly striking orange. As they met, they reverberated a booming roar. That sound vibrated me. Sorry. Vibrated me. The sound surrounded me, spreading wide, consuming all in its path. The colourful shapes quickly washed out, losing their colour, slipping away into the same shade of unimpressive grey. And then I felt it. My keen senses were lost to the void. Sharp edges blurred, until nothing remained but the darkest abyss. I fell. I woke up feeling a little disoriented, but it quickly passed. My slumber refueled me with tremendous stamina. A few more drops of energy might have brought me enough time to actually get out of bed, or get into the bed. But I was truly bone dry at the time. Vague memories of a dream unsettled me, but the specifics were lost. It couldn't have been anything pleasant, surely just a reflection of my awful night. A ray of bright sunlight burst through the window. Catching my eye as I rolled over, a sign that I had been out at least several hours. I squinted and pulled myself up to rest on the side of the bed, escaping the blinding light. My parents still weren't home, that much was clear. Otherwise, they would have found me sleeping, woken me up. It didn't feel great to know, but the sting of not being here already bit me. The new day presented me with a number of possibilities. My sleep merely a reprieve for me to regain composure, balance of emotions, and recharge. This is basically here. One idea. I wake up, had a funny dream, my parents aren't home. But you'll also note that this had a sense of purpose. This here is facts. Facts, 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 facts. I feel good. There's a ray of light outside. My parents aren't home. What am I going to do? They're all sort of checkpoints for the narrative. And instead of me feeling like I'm with him, like I woke up to the cutting brightness of outside wash over me. How long had I been asleep for? Surely a few hours, otherwise I wouldn't have woken up to such strong daylight. And then it hit me, that strange dream. I felt it wash over me and I couldn't quite feel the edges of it, but at the very least, it wasn't a bad dream, I think. So I roll over, check the time, but I must have left my phone at home. Full stop. That's an entire paragraph. New paragraph. Where are my parents? I wondered. Where had they gone to? I felt strange, as though I was the only person left alive in this whole world, that if I were to step outside and run down the road and try and flag somebody down, I wouldn't find anybody. It'd just be me in this limbo. That sense dogged me as I brushed the sleep from my eyes and swiveled off the edge of my sheets. Blah blah blah, and I get up. Second paragraph. So you see, what I'm doing there is I'm expanding on core ideas, rather than just being like, I feel bad. Now I'm awake. Where are my parents? Don't split them up. Keep them into one flow and pretend like you're breathing. Keep an eye on how many lines you're writing. Don't stop the idea until you've done at least 6 or 7, then push into the new one. If you run out of the central idea, ask yourself if your next idea can be linked in with the previous one. If you are... good voice note. 2 hours, 24 minutes. If you're having trouble linking paragraphs... Oh, what was that? Because you run out of ideas. Or the idea has run its course. Because the idea has run its course, then consider linking them. E.g., these two. Take the two paragraphs above. How can we link them? Maybe like this. Have a listen to my suggestion off the cuff. I'll just... It's basically, it's like, I'll type it out again. Here is a paragraph that you sort of can see is an amalgamation of this idea, that idea, this idea, that idea. All of these sentences can be comprised into one paragraph here, which is going to be in orange. Right. That's what I want Sayaka to really focus on, is to go through the story and to see if, instead of just doing like line, to read through things and to keep in their head, okay, what happens if I link up these paragraphs? How do I link them? Linking them is really easy. You just flow. You push through an idea instead of being like, okay, there's sunlight outside, I remember nothing, new paragraph. Now I'm going to talk about the dream. Keep it in the same paragraph. So the sunlight's washed over my character and they're waking up. How do I make them remember the dream? Well, what if they're still a bit sleepy? What if like the unease starts to push into their minds? That's how you got to link the ideas together. You just ask, how can you link them all? It's just intuitive, I guess. You just gotta just do it. And then edit. Oh, thank you. Thanks, Clem. I think that was the one that I spoke out loud. or typed down, either way. But thank you. Oh no, no. No, don't put yourself down like that. Um, but thank you for complimenting me. That makes my ego feel very nice. Um, yeah. I don't know. I just talked and out it came. But I guess that's how it's sort of when you get into the flow of writing, that's what it feels like. Like you got this the sort of the construction up here, and you're just tapping away. And when you get into a smooth flow, the paragraphs just roll out. And I guess that's what you got to practice doing, rather than trying to get this idea and then that idea and then that idea. Try and synthesize them all. I think that's what I'm suggesting here. Oh, thank you, Clem. Oh, that's nice of you to say. Hmm. I feel all warm and fuzzy. Yeah, I think it was at about 222. You can make a clip of it, actually. I don't know how you do that on Twitch. TTLACC made a clip of me once. I think you just go back into the stream and like clip thing it. I don't know. I don't know how to make a clip. But if you can, that'd be cool. And then I can link it to Sayaka. Yeah, that's a good idea. Um, I'm probably gonna call it a night. I don't think I can do more. Because my voice is hurting. And I'm also getting a bit tired. But I think I've also got the main point across, and I think my usefulness for the edit has kind of reached a peak. I think if I just continued on, I'd be talking more and more and more about I'd just be repeating myself, I think. This is the element that I want Sayaka to work on the most, is to think about how all of these different ideas that are floating around can be synthesized into paragraph style sentences, and how the ideas can be synthesized into paragraphs. Because I think once you do that, then the editing, the line edits can really take effect and make the story shine in a sense. Um, I'll ask Sayaka for permission to share this story in my Discord as well, if we all want to go and read the ending too. Because I think I'll switch over to Clem's story for the stream on Sunday. Yeah, I think yeah, if I continued editing this story, and I'd be more than happy to. I just feeling like I'd be repeating my suggestion, because that's probably the biggest thing. Oh, the paragraphs start to get a little bigger here. Yeah, maybe on this page too, four liners. Yeah, I'll ask Sayaka whether we can paste the story into Discord and see what she says. Nice. Alrighty, thank you guys for joining me. Thank you, Cuddly Clem. Thank you, Liberta114. Thanks for your good discussions and for keeping me company. And Clem, we'll be doing your story on Sunday. Yay! Good. Yeah, I'll shut down the stream. So we'll catch you on Sunday, 9 AM, and I'll be on Discord telling people to come on with the @everyone command. My pleasure, Clem. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for your kind words too. Good. Well, we'll see you next stream.